Hello and welcome to the Yes You Can podcast. My name's Claire, I'm your podcast host. Thank you very much for joining me on this very cloudy Sunday afternoon, but it's quite a nice day to be fair. As was the format of the last podcast, this is also in video form and I'm going to take you on a walk with me as I have a chat about how things have been over the last 2 weeks. One of the things that I do this for is, although I like to plan and to motivate and discuss things, like last time it was goals and things like that. The main reason I started this and started my blog is to be honest. It's about mental health and about how it affects me, about my experiences, and hopefully kind of help reduce the stigma, help start conversations with people, help people realise that it's not a bad thing to talk about it, it's not a bad thing to ask for help. I wasn't going to film this today. It's been a very, very long 2 weeks, and for anyone that knows me, I'm going through a stage at the minute where I don't like this. I don't like how I look. I don't like what I see in the mirror and things like that. And at the minute, I'm incredibly run down. I think you can probably see with the eye bags and the giant cold sore that me and my best mate have decided is named Crisp-tifer. So funny. So yeah, I am quite frankly on my arse at the minute. But I think sometimes the best time to be honest is when you do feel like shit. And that is the time where maybe other people need to kind of hear that they're not alone. I'd done a post on my social medias yesterday, which is roughly around what this blog, vlog, podcast, etc. is based around, about how I'd went and asked for help, and I was saddened but happy that people were reaching out to me off the back of that post. Saddened because it hits you how many people are struggling, and me being me, I just want to make everyone happy and take everything away, and if I could do what I can to make sure everyone else felt good, I would. But I'm glad that people know that they can reach out and they can talk to me, and like I said, it's just helping them realise that they're just a little bit less alone. Things might be really hard, and it might be hard to see the end of the line or see the light at the end of the tunnel and stuff like that, but it's the one promise I make, that no matter how shitty you might be feeling at the minute, and I'm there with you, I feel like utter shit, we've got each other and we will get there. Right, let's get my ass out of this car and let's go for a walk. She needs a wash, she does, God love her. Fuming because I've only got 14% on my watch battery, so I'm hoping I can get this walk done. Now, for anyone that who maybe doesn't know me personally and has just found this on Spotify or YouTube or whatever, I live in a town called Stockton in Teesside. I know last time we were just mooching around the streets and close to where I live, but this time I thought I'd come down to the Tees barrage. I do love walking down here, to be honest, but normally I would go up to the barrage itself, and I've just realised that the coffee van that I like, Sanseb, is clearly here, but I'm not. I'm going to go a different way, but this is the Infinity Bridge. As usual, you might find that at certain times I'm pressing pause, or I come back in a different place to what I was originally. That's just because where possible I'm going to try not to get others in the video. It's not fair, they don't ask to be in my videos and stuff. So yeah, if I suddenly disappear and appear somewhere else, that is why. Now, like I said, I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't going to do this morning. I thought, I'm really on my arse, to be quite honest. I'm absolutely knackered. But then I thought, this is probably the best time to just share how I've been feeling recently, and like I said, to hopefully show that it's never ever a bad thing to ask for help. February is always a really difficult time for me. I was never really a fan of the month anyway for some reason. I know everyone normally hates January, but for some reason February's always been one of those months where it's just, I don't know, I just seem to struggle the most. But then 2 years ago, I also lost my dad on the 4th of February. Obviously losing my dad was incredibly difficult anyway. There's a big long story about that. I think many of you who read my blogs and stuff might be aware, but basically my dad was a chronic alcoholic. He had been all my life. Around the age of about 19, he kind of just disappeared off the planet. I know that sounds really random, but he did just literally one day just disappear. And for about 20 years, we didn't know. No one knew. No one had heard from him. None of my family, not my uncle or anyone. And it wasn't until I think it was 2022. Yeah, I was in 2022. My mum told me that he was alive. I'd for about a good 15 years of those 20 years, I genuinely believed my dad was dead. But 2022, my cousin had actually managed to track him down, and he was living as close as Sunderland. So due to the situation, the way things were, and obviously the feelings of rejection and things that I'd had, and the worry about his health and stuff like that, I reached out to him. Sounds proper old school. I wrote him a letter because at the time I didn't know if he'd even want to speak to me, if he wanted anything to do with me. Obviously he literally disappeared out of my life without so much of a word. And I knew, well, the reaction that came from me when I got told he was alive was something I would never have expected. Like, I literally broke down in absolute disbelief. But what I knew was, if I was to call him and he was to put the phone down on me, or I was to visit him because my cousin had given me his address, and he decided he didn't want to speak to me, then I didn't want to even contemplate how that would have made me feel. Despite all of the shit and how he was and all of that, like, I have been and always will be a daddy's girl. So yeah, I wrote him a letter. And I remember, I don't remember the date or anything like that, but I remember I was working for Mind at the time, and I'd got in my car. I was off to do a home visit, and I'd stored the number that my cousin had given me in my phone, obviously as Dad, which felt so surreal at the time. And as I was pulling out of the car park, or where I park my car, my phone started ringing. It was connected to, my phone connects to my car, fancy I know, and it just came up on the screen, Dad, and I just started shaking. Like, I was thinking, what on earth have I got myself into here? And I know that's probably a mad way of thinking about hearing from my dad. Like, I don't suppose anyone can really understand unless you've been in that situation. But anyway, he rang, and it was so strange, but in an amazing way, to hear his voice. Now, obviously I didn't know the extent, well, I knew the extent of his health issues when he'd disappeared all those years before, so I knew he wasn't a well man. But unfortunately he'd decided to tell me that he no longer drank, which, when he first told me, I really, really wanted to believe. I knew he was in health with things like osteoporosis and stuff. I really wanted to believe, but as time went on, I'd get voicemails from him, and he was clearly drunk. And I'd made the decision that I wasn't going to see him face to face, that I was happy to be back in contact with him. It was amazing to know my dad was still around and was so close to home, but I'd made a decision early on that I wasn't going to physically see him. at least not for a while. I don't think I just wasn't ready for that, and I've got an image of my dad in my head, of my dad, how he looked, how he presented himself, who he was as a person. Obviously, alcohol aside, as a kid I remember he was a very different person when he was drunk, but at the time I didn't really know any different. I didn't know that wasn't normal, I suppose, and that's why to me I wanted him in my life. I wanted to see him every weekend. I know there was weekends that he would turn up and he was drunk and my mum wouldn't let us go, and then there was lots of weekends where he just wouldn't turn up at all, and I do remember that disappointment, but it was always forgotten when he'd turn up the next time, because he was my dad and I was getting to see him, and everything prior to that always disappeared because I got to spend some time with my dad. I know that it must be hard for people to understand that, and I think it's very easy for people to judge addiction, drug, alcohol or whatever it is, and all I can say to that is I hope you never have any experience with that yourself, whether personally or through people you know. I've literally torn myself apart since being a kid, thinking that although he was my dad and I adored him, I blamed myself and thought I wasn't good enough for my dad to stop drinking. I wasn't enough for my dad to stop drinking, and that's been unfortunately a thread throughout my life. Something I've explored a lot in therapy in the past, about not being good enough for anyone. I never see myself as good enough for anyone, family, friends, partners, children. Hence the fact that when I'd made that decision those years ago to end my own life, it wasn't because I was being selfish and I couldn't cope, although I was struggling to cope. It was because I felt like my children needed a better life. They needed someone that was good enough for them, for the amazing people that they were, and that's ultimately, like you said, been the thread of my life, and it's still there. I often struggle daily with not being good enough, feeling like I'm not good enough at work, feeling like I'm not a good enough parent, feeling like I'm not a good enough friend, feeling like it is a thread. But anyway, I was in contact with him, like I said, over the telephone, and that was great and that was working. And then 2 years ago, it was actually on a Monday, I was at work, I remember it as clear as day. My uncle rang me, and anyone that knows me knows I don't do phone calls. I bloody hate phone calls, and we don't, like, it sounds a bit weird, but we don't ring each other really, unless, so I didn't even say hello. I picked up the phone and went, he's dead, isn't he? And that was when I think reality hit, and I was just, it sounds a bit dramatic to say kind of my world collapsed, because to be quite frank, my dad can't take credit for anything that I've created in my life. He hasn't been around for a bit of it. He's never met my children. He didn't even know I'd been married and things like that. Like, he had no idea who I was, bar the 18, 19-year-old girl that he'd left. But he's my dad, and my heart broke, and that day I lost a part of my heart that I'm never going to get back again, and I know that. The circumstances itself were, again, it sounds dramatic, but they were incredibly traumatic. For anyone knows or has experienced alcoholism, it destroys your life. Nothing prepared me, not the job I've done, the people I've worked with and stuff like that in mental health and everything, nothing prepared me for that day when I went up to his flat. I was trying to find paperwork and stuff, and to see that the way that my dad lived and the way that he died in the circumstances he died. And that is something that no amount of therapy or anything will take away. I'll never forget that image. But what I'm now trying to reframe it as is he was clearly a man so trapped in the depths of struggling. His demons were so strong that the love of his children and his family were just not enough. You're gorgeous. Hello, beautiful. And now how I see it as is he's in a much better place wherever he may be. No more pain, no more struggles, and I hope that wherever he is, he's looking down or up or across, wherever he is, I hope that he's proud, and I hope he knows how much I loved him. I wasn't given the opportunity to say goodbye to him when he was taken into hospital. I won't go into the details of that, but I was never given that opportunity, and I hope he knows that I would have been by his side if I was given that chance, and that I don't think badly of him. I've had a lot of emotions over the years about it, but I don't think badly of him. I don't pity him, which I know sounds a bit random, because but pity's it's a difficult thing, really. I can understand it, but I don't like it. But ultimately he did make his choices, and I just hope that wherever he is, he's smiling. So February is now just brings that back. It's never easy losing anybody, but it just highlights a lot of stuff. And when you've got, so I've been doing really well. Like I said in the last one, I've been doing really well. I've been therapy free since July last year, absolutely buzzing, and I still am. I've got absolutely no qualms about going back into it if I needed to. But last week, or the week before, I had to admit defeat. Things had happened, I don't need to talk about, but things had happened, and on the Tuesday I just realised that I was absolutely done. I was like, well, I wasn't. What I realised was just how much I was massively struggling, and I knew that I was only so far away from going back into that dark place that I know, and it does actually cause genuine fear. I know that if I go back to that place again, and by that place I mean where you really don't, you think that you shouldn't be here anymore and that you shouldn't exist. I know that if I go back to that place, I'm going to struggle more than I ever have to get back out of it again. It does take great strength to get out of that place, to get out of thinking that you don't deserve to be here and stuff. But every time you go back there, I think anyone that knows what I'm talking about would agree that it gets harder every time to get back out of it, because you feel more, I suppose, more like a failure, because the things that you're doing aren't working and you can't always quite work out why. And what I mean by that is, over the years I've got a good collection of coping strategies. Being out for a walk is one of them, so this is already making me feel miles better this morning, well, this afternoon actually. But yeah, I've basically been doing everything in my mental health toolkit, as they like to call it, and just nothing was working. Not still sleeping. I'd completely lost my appetite, which for a lass like me who loves a grub was a big concern. And these are the two signs that I know that I'm going back into a bad place. And I was more irritable. Feelings of sadness were really strong, and just feeling like overwhelmed with everything now. I like to be busy. Like, I live my life on being busy. I love working under pressure. I've got a lot of good things going on, but even looking at all the good things going on just wasn't helping. I was starting to think, what's the point? You're just kidding yourself, Claire.
Lap 1, 1917.
I ain't had a bad lap considering I'm talking. I wasn't in a good place. I'm incredibly lucky that I've got a fantastic SLT team, and they understood that I needed an amazing colleague that I work with. Don't tell her that though, because she'll get a big head. But they realised that I needed some time. And for me, I've had to walk around, so that's Victoria Bridge. Fascinating fact, there's still bullet holes from the wall from the wall up on the top. I didn't know that, but then I've seen them and it's quite fascinating. Anyway, so yeah, I'm lucky I've got a really supportive workplace, and I genuinely thought I'll take a day, maybe two, and I'll be fine and dandy. I just needed a breather perhaps. Nah. Day 3, and I realised that I just wasn't in a good way. Like I said, not in the place where I wanted to do anything bad, but in a place where I knew that I needed to go and ask for some professional help. Now, I've said this a million times, I'm incredibly lucky. My GP practice is phenomenal when it comes to mental health. Absolutely amazing. I think if I'd had surgeries like I have in the past, I remember one, don't know if I've ever talked about it, but I remember one years ago, before I realised exactly what was going on, I'd actually went and asked for help and said, like, look, I don't feel right. And the doctor made me feel about an inch tall. He was a complete and utter prick. He thought I was doing it for a sick note. I was like, no, that's not what I want. The worst thing you can do is sign me off work. I just want some help. And he had no clue. He had zero interest and was just not bothered. Yeah, just wasn't bothered. Just a random fact that there used to be my old office, which is where my whole journey weirdly started. Old Richard House. So yeah, my GP practice now is absolutely unreal. And I went in and I sat down, and I genuinely didn't, like, when I was sat in the waiting room, I felt alright. I didn't think that I was emotional or anything. I was just going to go in and be, this is this. Oh, the smell of weed is strong today. But as soon as I sat down, I just kind of broke down crying. And I think, if I'm honest, I did feel a bit of shame, which I know is probably ironic considering what I do is, like, why I do this. But I did. I'm thinking, I know what things are, and I know what I need to do, and I know. But sometimes sometimes it isn't enough. Sometimes you do need to reach out and get a little bit more, to get more help, to get professional help, to know that you don't have to do it alone, and you don't. And she listened to me. She was fantastic. And after being off medication for well over 2 years, I'm now back on it. And truthfully, at first I was disappointed. I was thinking, I've been, like, when you start hitting big milestones and you've managed to maintain it for such a significant amount of time, it does feel like a massive setback. And I was just like, oh, for God's sake, like, here we go again. But then, thanks to doing some compassion work quite a few years ago, in fact it wasn't quite a few years ago, it was not last year, the year before. Anyway, I'd done some work with a coach around compassion, self-compassion, and I'm really proud. Well, it's a two-factor proudness. I'm really proud that I managed to sit down with myself and think,
yes, I am disappointed. It would be a lie to say I'm not. But what I ultimately am is proud of myself for not being stubborn for once. Proud of myself for knowing that I'm at that point where I need to reach out. I knew I needed to reach out, because like I said, if I didn't, I knew what could potentially happen. I'm not saying it would have happened. I'm not saying that I would ever end up back in that dark place again. But the reality is I could, especially if I don't do what's needed at the time. So yeah, I'm back on medication, and I am hoping it's not going to be a long-term thing. It'll be at least 6 months, but I'm hoping it won't be a long-term thing. But do you know what? If it is, it's just that little bit of extra support. It's just that little bit of extra help in my brain. I haven't had... It's only been a week, so my side effects are a bit weird. Like, I have the worst, weirdest taste in my mouth. Still haven't started sleeping properly yet, but I know that takes time. But I haven't had chest pains and the tightness, so that's good. And things are starting to get a little bit easier. I went back to work. I never wanted to be off work. Like I said to you, I never wanted to be off work. I am so lucky that I can say, even though it's incredibly hard, some of the stuff we deal with in our job, and you do have to deal with some of the things that people are lucky that they don't have to. But I really do love my job, and I love the school, and I'm not saying this because I'm worried I'll get sacked or anything like that. Like, oh, that's a weird noise, Keith. I'm saying it because I do. I've got a lot on at the minute, a lot of exciting things, and like I said, I'm studying for my level 4 counselling, which is exciting because I've got, well, at the end of it, I'll be a qualified counsellor. So I'm absolutely over the moon with that. Obviously mix it in with my psychology degree and stuff. So there's a lot of good things happening. But I'm allowed, yet another bridge, I'm allowed to admit that things are hard sometimes. And it doesn't make me not good enough. And it doesn't make me shit or anything like that. It makes me human. And for years and years and years, I didn't want to be human. I wanted to be superhuman. I wanted to hide from all emotions. But I am human, and I want to be human. I want to feel the highs, I want to feel the lows. And I want to use my experiences to be able to help anyone else that doesn't kind of know what to do at the minute. So yeah, like I said, you seen me me rough, haggard face earlier on. I am not great, but I'm improving slowly day by day. I am having to admit that I need to slow down a bit for a day or so. So I was going to go to the gym today, but my body is telling me, chill the fuck out, Claire. Like, yeah, you're knackered. Like, I'm on my ass. But that's not a bad thing as such. Well, it is, but it isn't. It's because I know now how I am and stuff. I know what I need to do. And if it takes a day of just sitting on my ass, then it'll take a day of just sitting on my ass. So yeah, for anyone out there at the minute who is struggling, and like I said, unfortunately I do know there is quite a few of us, I promise that it's not always like this. I don't make promises that I know I can't keep, or that I don't make empty promises and things like that. I only say it if I mean it, and I do mean it, that things do get better. That voice in your head that's saying that you shouldn't be here anymore, it's lying to you. You're stronger than that. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help. Whether it be a family member, a friend, a professional. Don't feel shame if you feel like it's a massive setback like me. Maybe you do need to go back into counselling, or maybe you do need whatever it is they tell you. Don't see it as a failure. It's certainly not a failure. And one thing I do massively believe in is during my bad points, I learn some of the biggest lessons in my life during these times. So they're not in vain. And it certainly doesn't make you weak. Anyway, I just want to thank you very much for listening. I know it was a bit deep. I think I might have to put a trigger warning on this one anyway, potentially. But I just want to thank you all for listening, for supporting Yes You Can. And if you could like, subscribe and share, it would be much appreciated. Anyway, guys, I'm going to let you crack on with your Sunday or whatever day it is that you're listening to this. Any questions or themes or anything you'd like me to discuss any further, just give me a shout. Until next time, thank you, and remember, yes you can.